Okay, let's dive into one of the most harrowing events in modern Indian history, the hijacking of Flight IC-814. It was a crisis that absolutely gripped a nation and, honestly, left a legacy that we're still feeling today. So picture this. It's Christmas Eve 1999. A totally routine flight, IC-814, is making its way from Kathmandu to Delhi. But just as it crosses into Indian airspace, silence. The plane, with 190 souls on board, just disappears from radar. It had been hijacked, and this was the start of a national crisis that would unfold over the longest, most agonizing week imaginable. And this timeline, wow, it really shows you the sheer scale of this thing. This wasn't just a single standoff. The hijackers dragged this plane on a grueling journey across 4 different countries, from India to Pakistan, the UAE, and then finally Afghanistan. Each stop was a terrifying new chapter in this 8-day ordeal.
So, how on earth did this all begin? And maybe more importantly, was there a moment, a chance, to stop it all on day one? A chance that was tragically missed.
Well, it really all started in Kathmandu. Back in the 90s, the airport there was known to be a hub for militants, and security checks were, well, alarmingly poor. This vulnerability is exactly what allowed 5 hijackers to smuggle weapons, knives, even explosives, right onto the plane. It was really the first domino to fall in this whole disaster. So after the hijack, the plane is forced to land in Amritsar, India, to get more fuel. And for 48 critical minutes, that aircraft was sitting on Indian soil. This was it. This was the golden opportunity to end it. But because of a devastating mix of confusion, slow responses, and no clear chain of command, elite security forces just couldn't get there in time to intervene.
And that delay, it proved to be absolutely fatal. The hijackers, frustrated and angry, took off again from Amritsar, but not before they brutally murdered a passenger, a newlywed named Rupin Katyal. He became the first, and thankfully only, casualty of the hijacking, a life that was lost right in that missed window of opportunity.
After a couple of brief, incredibly tense stops in Lahore and Dubai, the plane's final, chilling destination became Kandahar, Afghanistan. Now, at the time, this was the heartland of the Taliban's territory. This was a regime India didn't even recognize, which meant no diplomatic channels, no leverage, and really, no easy options left.
And here's where things get a little bizarre. You see the human element behind the terror. These were the 5 hijackers, all from the militant group Harkat-ul-Mujahideen. And they used these strange, almost mundane codenames. I mean, Burger. Survivors later said he was kind of talkative, while Chief and Doctor were the clear and much more ruthless leaders of the group.
So from Kandahar, their goal became crystal clear. The hijackers wanted their comrades freed. And while that first demand was huge, it really boiled down to getting one man out in particular, the notorious militant leader, Maulana Masood Azhar. Now, the Taliban publicly claimed they were just neutral mediators trying to help. But the Indian negotiators on the ground, they told a very, very different story. They reported that the Taliban was actively protecting the hijackers, using their own tanks and soldiers to form a perimeter that made any kind of Indian commando raid completely impossible. This whole situation basically backed the Indian government into a horrifying corner. The military option was off the table, the lives of 179 people were just hanging in the balance, and the entire country was watching, terrified. They were facing an impossible choice. And back home in India, the pressure was just mounting by the hour. You have to picture it, the families of the hostages, holding these emotional daily protests right outside the Prime Minister's residence. Their desperate pleas were being broadcast live 24/7, creating this overwhelming wave of public opinion that was demanding one thing: save the hostages, whatever it takes.
And this right here, this visualizes that impossible choice perfectly. On one side, you've got the moral duty to save 179 innocent lives. On the other, the long-standing national security policy of never, ever negotiating with terrorists. If they gave in, they'd save the hostages now, sure, but they could be setting a really dangerous precedent for the future. What do you do?
So after 7 agonizing days, with the passengers' health getting worse and the hijackers getting more and more desperate, the government made its choice. They agreed to the hijackers' core demand. They actually managed to negotiate it down from 36 militants to 3. 3 terrorists would be freed in exchange for the lives of everyone on board.
The immediate crisis was finally over. But that decision to trade prisoners for hostages would end up casting a very long, very dark shadow. So let's look at the devastating price of that deal
and also the sweeping changes that it ultimately triggered.
The first terrorist release was Masood Azhar. Almost immediately after he was freed, he went on to found Jaish-e-Mohammed in Pakistan. That's the terror group that would orchestrate some of the deadliest attacks in India's history, including the shocking assault on its own parliament.
The second man they freed was Ahmed Omar Saeed Sheikh. His freedom led directly to another infamous act of terror, the kidnapping and absolutely brutal murder of the American journalist Daniel Pearl in Pakistan, just a few years later.
And the third, Mushtaq Ahmad Zargar. He went right back to Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and immediately got back to his old job as a key trainer, preparing a whole new generation of militants. So you see, the consequences of the government's decision weren't just theoretical. They were swift, and they were deadly.
But here's the thing. Out of this absolute tragedy, a revolution was born. The hijacking exposed massive gaping holes in Indian aviation security, and it forced a complete overhaul. A single professional force took over all airport security. Armed sky marshals were put on flights. Cockpit doors were reinforced to be bulletproof. Screening became way stricter. The goal was simple. Make sure a hijacking like IC-814 can never, ever happen again.
And this brings us right back to the central, haunting question of this entire crisis. The government saved 179 lives, but in doing so, they unleashed terrorists who would go on to kill hundreds more. It's a question with no easy answer, a dilemma that policymakers and citizens are still debating to this day. When innocent lives are on the line, is there any price that is too high to pay?